Welcome to Oh Yes, You Can. In this series, we're going to be practicing our drawing skills, and we're going to play with watercolors and have a lot of fun doing so. To get us started, you'll need some materials at hand, and this is what you will be needing. Let's see, we'll need, of course, the watercolors. These are readily available at just about any place that sells art and hobby supplies. I pulled out a nice new shiny one that I borrowed from somebody. This one was available at Walmart, I believe. I'm not sure I'm right about that. When we get these inexpensive packs like this, they frequently come with a brush. I'm not sure I can get it out. I'll show you the brush that... I don't like these brushes at all. I haven't figured out what to do with them except put them out of my way. I'll show you what I prefer that we use. I think we'll have a lot happier results. So, you need a tray of paints. You'll need brushes, obviously. I just laid out an assortment of watercolor brushes. These are nice, fluffy. They hold a lot of water. They hold a lot of paint. They can do many, many things. They're also a little bit on the expensive side, so we're not going to use those today. I'll put those aside and play with them on my own time. Meanwhile, you clearly need brushes. And I find these, can't seem to stay in front of the camera here. You'll find these also quite reasonably priced at any place that has art and hobby supplies. I did pick these up at the local Walmart, so I know that they have been available there, and they were, at the time I got them, they were like around $5. So relatively inexpensive. I'm going to pull out the two that we will be using today out of my set and see if you can approximate these. These I call brights. They have a nice, clean, sharp edge. And they are in two different sizes. Approximately these sizes would be nice. The bigger one, of course, will fill in the larger areas of our painting, and we'll do the detail work with the smaller of the two. So we'll put those aside and save them for a little bit later on. We need watercolors, right? We need a water tub. I don't fill it real full because I have a tendency to spill things. And we have to change the water frequently anyhow because it gets dirty. Okay, we also need paper towels. Regular old kitchen stock paper towels. 1, 2, 3 of them, just so that you can fold them down. About 4th works well. Makes a nice cushiony pad. This helps us control the amount of water in our brushes, or the paint in our brushes. So you'll need folded paper towels. Put those aside for a moment. Oh, I skipped the paper. You need watercolor paper. And unfortunately, watercolor paper is something you really need. You can't too nicely substitute other things because watercolor paper is quite a bit heavier than copier paper, for example, and it soaks up a lot of water. And it looks like it looks like this. I don't know if you can tell anything about the ply of this or not, but it's much thicker, heavier than other kinds of paper. Watercolor paper, and while you're getting watercolor paper, I suggest strongly that you don't just go by what it says watercolor. That's not quite enough information. Down here somewhere in the bottom, it will tell you it'll tell you the weight. I can't see it at the moment. What I'm suggesting that you find is the one that says 140 pound, right down in under here somewhere. 140 pound, 140. That gives you the nice, sturdy paper that is less likely to curl when it gets damp. If you get the less expensive ones, I think it's the 90 pound or something like that, they just kind of curl up, and you could use them, but it's a lot more challenging. So if you're going to be getting watercolors, get the 140 pound weight. And if that isn't possible, or maybe you already have some watercolor paper on hand, a substitute that will work, not quite as happily, but it will work, is provide yourself with an easel of some kind. This is just cut out from a cardboard box. Works beautifully. Put your watercolor paper. You can do this with a heavier kind too if you want to. Doesn't matter. Don't need to so much. But attach it with a waterproof, like a painter's tape, around the four edges. Be sure that it's nice and smooth on your easel background. Tape the edges. If you tape them nice and evenly around on all the four edges, you already have a built-in frame for your finished product. So that's just an option that you may or may not want to use. So putting that aside, moving on. Today we're going to need also pencil and eraser, because we're going to begin with a sketch of our subject today. Did I hear you say you can't draw? Oh, yes, you can. Come on along with me and I'll show you. We'll do it together. Okay? For today's project, you'll want only a half sheet of your watercolor paper. This is 6 by 9. The large size, the tablet size is 9 by 12. So half of that, 6 by 9, is going to be quite adequate for what we're doing, because we are going to be doing a banana that looks good enough to eat. This one very nicely is even developing some brown spots and some interesting characteristics that we may incorporate into our painting today. I'll show you how to do that as we go along. Okay? Arm yourself with all those materials. Just a quick review. We need tissue paper, not tissue paper, paper towels I mean, watercolor paper, pencil and eraser, brushes, watercolor paints. Remember, this was optional. The easel and the taping down procedure, that's up to you. And last but not least, we need the watercolor paper. Okay. Just a bit of advice before we even get really into this. Let's arrange our workspace so that it is convenient and in the best interest of our finished product. I happen to be right-handed. That's my art hand. If you're left-handed, you'll be doing just the opposite of these directions. All my materials that could damage my painting, the water, the paint box, the brushes, and the paper towel are going to go on my painting side, on my right-hand side. If you're left-handed, obviously just the reverse is true. The logic being, if I have water or paint in my brush already, and I go across my piece of artwork, drip, splat, disaster. So, just begin by having all those scary supplies, scary if you will, on your painting side. And then we'll go on from there. Okay? All right, let's see now. I need to direct you to the pencil and the eraser. We're going to be using a sketching line. And we've talked about this before, and you may recall a sketching line is just a light touch of the pencil, just as a guideline. It won't become part of our finished product probably, and therefore we have the eraser available for when we're ready for it. But if you sketch with a dark line, as some of us tend to do, it's awfully hard to erase, and so sometimes you have leftover traces of that sketching or that initial drawing that you really don't want to be in your finished product. So, sketching lines, light, eraser handy, half sheet of watercolor paper, ready? Let's go. Put your half sheet in the horizontal position. This is just like on your computer. There's the horizontal and there's the portrait. We're using the horizontal today because what we're drawing, obviously, a banana is going to be more long in shape than it is tall in shape. So, landscape position for today. Pencil, eraser handy, but we don't need it for a while. Alright, I forgot to tell you. Obviously you can't see my sketch marks, so I'm going to be using a marker. You please use your pencil so you can erase. Obviously I can't. Okay? But this is what I want you to do. Visualize your banana. And they come in different sizes. The one I showed you a minute ago is a gigantor. I don't usually get them this big. I like to find the little pygmies that are, like half that size or so. Then I don't have to count quite as many calories. Okay, your banana is your choice. So, paper in the landscape position. I want you to put a dot at one end of the banana and a dot at the other end of the banana. And all you're doing, can you even see that? I guess you can. Yeah. All you're doing is showing the length of your banana. You're measuring right now. Okay, so you've got a dot at one end of the banana and a dot at the other end of the banana. And you're going to hang a hammock in between those two. What does Linda mean? Dot to dot, just like when we were kids. And we've hung a hammock. Kind of shows us where we're going with this banana already, doesn't it? Okay, that's the top of the banana. Let's draw the bottom of the banana starting at the dot again. This one obviously goes down well below somewhere. Don't make it too fat. We don't want it to be a gigantor banana. Like so. Are you thinking about bananas or looking at your sample maybe? Are you remembering that they have veins? It's not just one smooth, rounded skin. There are some vein lines in there too. So let's put in one vein line in between the two we have already. I'm going to make mine just a little closer to the top than the bottom. Doesn't really matter. And we have our banana sketch. Do you need to make any erasures or changes? Now's a good time to do it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Bananas are not any more perfect than people are. So make yours look kind of sort of like mine. And when you're done with that, put your pencil and eraser aside. And let's move on to the fun stuff. I'm going to put that out of the way for just a minute or two. While I'm fumbling around here, I forgot to tell you about one thing you will need later on, unless you've got a pocket full of patience. You'll need a hairdryer. Doesn't have to be a big old monster like mine. You know, the art ones are little teeny tiny. Whatever you have. whatever you have. And if you don't have a hairdryer handy or something like that, you're just going to have a pocket full of patience, because some of the steps in watercolor must be dry before you can continue. Otherwise, it's disaster. So, here we go again. Paint tray, water tub. I'm going to use my biggest brush. And all I'm doing right now is getting my paints ready to use. And we're not going to use all the colors today. We're only going to need the yellow. I'm going to move this camera down just a minute. Maybe you can see what I'm doing. That was not a good idea. Never mind. I'm getting water in my brush, and I'm going to just moisten the color I'm interested in, which right now is yellow. And because I touched the yellow paint, now of course I have yellow in my brush, so I've got to stop and wash it out, tap it on my paper towel before I can do the next step. So I've dampened the yellow one. What else do we need? Oh, we need brown today. I think this is my brown here. I'm putting water on the brown one, and again my brush is touching the paint, so it's getting paint in the brush, so I've got to clean it before I do the next color, which is going to be purple. Tap, tap, tap on my paper towel. Clean water. Purple paint moistened. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush before I forget and touch something with a purple color that I didn't intend to touch. Okay. So we have moistened only the yellow and the brown and the purple. Yours may be in different places on your box, but those are the three colors we need today. Yellow will be the base color for the banana. The brown spots and other detailing like that will be in brown. And then we're going to do some interesting shading toward the end with the purple, which is the complementary color of the yellow. So, how are we going to do this? Getting my paints and water and everything over on my painting side. I'm using my larger brush. I'm getting it wet again and making sure that I cleaned it thoroughly, because I don't want other colors in my painting now. Okay. Tap out some. The way you control watercolors is by the amount of moisture in your brush, whether it be water or paint or some combination thereof. So the more water you have, the lighter color you're going to be producing. The less water, more paint you have, clearly the darker, clearer, more intense color of paint you're going to have. By the way, watercolor dries lighter than it appears. So keep that in mind. If you think you have it dark enough, perhaps you need to let it dry and then go back and give it another coat. Sometimes it takes that to get the intensity of color that we want. For right now, we're going to, I want to show you on my other sketch for a minute here. Remember we did this with the seam line right in here? We are going to do the upper end of this first of all. Not the bottom, just this upper, the top of the hammock, and then the line right under it. So with my brush cleaned up, and then the yellow paint, by the way, I tapped the water out of my brush because I don't want it dripping, but I want intense yellow right now. So I'm going to paint between the lines, and my yellow in my paint box is not intense at all, so I may have to give it 2 or 3 coats to get the intensity that I want, because I think it's going to be even hard for you to see what I have done. I'm going stroke, 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 back and forth in long strokes to fill this top area of the banana. Wow, it's really, really, really faint, isn't it? Well, it's not going to get any darker probably until it dries, so I'm going to have to leave that for a moment. Clean my brush and think what to do next while I'm waiting for that to dry just a little bit. One judge of how moist the paper and the paint are is to look at the paper, and if you can still see shiny spots, it's too wet. Wait until the shine goes away before you try to do any next steps with watercolor. The exception to that is when you want colors to bleed together and blend into a new combination. Alright, the shine seems to be gone away on mine, so I'm going to try to give myself some more yellow. Oh yeah. Some more yellow in the upper part of my banana. I'm not adding any more water to my brush. I'm just going straight to the yellow and getting lots of paint in my brush. And that's better. Not as dark as I'd like it, so I probably will go back in with yet another one. But while I'm waiting for that shine to go away, I'm going to load up my brush again with lots of yellow, not any more water, just lots of yellow. I'm going to come down to the bottom of the banana, right across the bottom edge of it, and paint in that section. My brush got way too dry. I have to put a little more water in it, tap, 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 some out on the paper towel, more paint. I'm working with the yellow now and doing the bottom, about half that bottom section of the banana. And again, I'm going to have to add more layers, but you can begin to see the banana color emerging. Okay, now, notice I said while that's still wet, let's make sure our brush is pretty well dried. Tap, 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 whatever's in the brush. Let's go back and just drag some of that leftover color that is on the top and bottom sections, drag it into the middle section. And if you're not getting quite enough color out of it because it got too dry, a little bit of water in the brush, tap, tap. Let's go back and pick up the yellow and drag it down into the middle section so that we're getting a lighter, brighter shade of yellow there in the middle. And that's because banana, of course, is sort of rounded, and that middle section is going to reflect more light from the surrounding area than the top and bottom. Mine still is not dark enough to please me, so at some point when it is dry enough to work with, I'm going to go back and increase the intensity on the top, increase the intensity on the bottom, and if needed, I'll repeat that dragging process with a semi-wet brush. Just drag some of the color from the top down into the middle parts where the light is reflecting back and making it appear a little bit lighter. Okay, let's let that dry for a bit. Let's clean up our brush. And I think right now we are going to get into the brown. I don't think we're going to need the dryer before we get into the brown because we want some of our, like our bruise spots or something on our banana to kind of blend over and mix with the yellow color around them. So I was using the larger brush. I'm going to change to the smaller brush, wet it, and I'm going to get into my brown paint. I didn't tell you when I did it, I just did it automatically. I wet my brush and I didn't tell you to tap, tap, tap and get some of the excess water off onto that paper towel. Please do that. And then get your brown paint. Now I'm going to test that brown paint on my paper towel and see if it's the color, if it's too dark or too light. If it's too dark, I need a little more water in my brush. If it's too light, I need a little less water in my brush and more paint. So let's go back to that first dot we made over here. We're going to call this the stem end of our banana. And the stem end is just making those initial lines a little bit longer, just like this. Come out with the brown, come up with the brown. Having trouble finding my camera. Okay, and then just, I'm using the sharp edge of my brush. I'm standing it up on his nose, so to speak, and just using the very, very edge of that so I can get a clean, sharp line. Now I'm going to come down in between those two lines that I did already and just put in a little bit of streaking back and forth. I don't want it to be a solid brown because the stem is not all colored in. So bring it down just something like that with a series of straight lines just made with the tippy tip of your brush. You might want to start up here at the top end of the stem and paint down toward the middle. That way you're getting less paint on the paper as you go, and that just increases the shading effect of it. Okay, that's the stem end. That's where it grew in the bunch of bananas with his brothers and sisters on the banana tree. Banana palm, I think it's called. On the other end, I've never seen a banana tree bloom, but I'm sure they must, because they have, over here on this end, where I presume the blossom was. If you think about an apple or a pear, they all have that little end where the blossom was at one point before the apple formed or the pear formed. Same thing with a banana. So you need that little brown spot on the other end too. Now, while we're playing around here, let's take some of the brown out of our brush. We don't want it to be quite so intense. Tap, tap, tap a little bit of water out of the brush. Go back to the brown. And let's decide. Can you see on my banana? It's a pretty healthy banana. It doesn't have a whole lot of brown spots on it yet. But the brown spots develop wherever they develop on a banana. That just, I guess, maybe bruising. I'm not sure what causes it. People handling it at the store maybe cause it. I'm not sure. We're just going to tap, tap, tap in some random brown spots here and there. Oops, my brown is too brown. Go back and get some out of my brush. More water in my brush. And I'm using, again, the tippy top of my brush. And I like that because as I moved across, I was using up the paint in my brush and it was getting lighter. So the brown was less intense, made lighter brown spots. I like that effect. Okay, whoa, just one or two more. And I'm going tap, tap, tap. And I'm going back to those ones that were too brown to suit me. And I'm taking the paint out of my brush. Plain old water. Tap, tap, tap. Most of the water out of my brush. And I'm going back to where it's too dark a brown. And I'm touching it and lifting some of the brown away because it was just too dark. I like that better. That looks more natural. Now, we are going to make our banana look contoured because they aren't flat. They're not just two-dimensional like our drawing. So we need to make our drawing look a little bit more three-dimensional, and we're going to do that by putting in some shading. So let's go now to a clean brush. Tap, tap, tap out the water. We're going to be using purple, but we don't want it to be very, very dark. So I think I'll go back and put a little bit of water back in my brush. Now go back and tap my purple. And that's that purple right there is way darker than I want me to have. So I need to, I think I'll just put some purple over here in one of the mixing trays on my paint box and add a little bit of water and stir it around, stir it around. See how that's reducing or lessening in intensity of color? Test that on your paper towel and see if that's what you want, because you want just a shade, not a dark purple. You want just a shading of purple. So with your brush loaded with not a whole lot of water, but some of that clean or diluted purple we just made, let's begin with that dividing line that we made, the second line we drew. No, it was the third line we drew. The one that was down from the top a little bit. Oh, look. See, now we've got the beginning of the banana has like 3 sections, I think. And so this would be one of the, if we were to peel the banana, it would be one of the sections of the inside of the banana. Okay, that doesn't look like quite enough, so I'm going to go back. I'm using that diluted paint again from the mixing area on my paint box. I'm going to, I think I'll go down to the very bottom. And if I have a darker purple down here, that'll be okay. In fact, it's not quite dark enough, because this is the bottom of the banana that is resting on the countertop. And that looks a little silly. That looks like red light, green light. It looks like it just needs to be mixed together. We need to mix our chocolate milk. I'm going to clean my brush. Take all the paint out. Tap, tap, tap. Make sure it's clean. Now I'm going to go back, pick up just a little bit of water. And where the purple and the yellow meet, right there where they overlap, let's put a layer of water right on top. Just water, no paint. Just water, and make that purple and yellow blend together a little less distinctly. I'm trying to leave it with the dark line closest to the bottom, and then as it moves up onto the banana, decreasing the color. See, I'm beginning to get a shade of the purple, not the intense purple. And I think I've got one more dividing line in mind, so I'm going to go back to that very weak diluted purple we used a while ago and put another rib line right down through the middle of the banana. And if you get, come here, picture, get it on the camera. If you get too much of a distinct line, like I'm getting right in that area, again, clean your brush, no paint in it, minimal water, and go back and just kind of go over those sections that are too dark and dilute a little bit of the color out of them. Okay, I told you a long time ago when we started this that I didn't think I liked the yellow, so now very carefully I'm going to clean my brush, go back and get a lot of yellow in my brush. Yours may not be as weak as mine, but my yellow is just really hard to use. So now I'm going back to that very top, the hammock line from the very beginning, and I'm carefully with the sharp edge of my little brush, I'm putting in more yellow where I thought it was needed. and probably even a little bit more down into the middle. If your yellow is too intense, put more water in your brush. Okay. Coming along, it's beginning to look like a banana that we might want to eat. But right now it seems to be floating in space, doesn't it? So let's anchor it to the surface. I'm going to clean my brush, dry my brush, and I think I will use purple or brown could work for this because we're going to do the shadow that the shape of the banana casts onto the surface below it. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm using either brush will work. It doesn't matter. But you're going to be using the sharp edge of the brush, minimal water, wet brush but minimal water. So tap out some of the water, and either brown or purple doesn't really matter. Let's load our brush, and we'll begin we're going to begin right at the fattest part of the banana where it touches the counter. Mine's laying on the counter here. Where it touches the counter first. And then we're going to work out in both directions and down with lessening amounts of paint in our brush each time. So that we're creating a shadow effect cast by the banana onto the table. My brush got too dry, so I have to go back and clean it out. Tap, minimal water. Plenty of color. I'm going to go back to that middle point and stroke out the other direction. And down just a little bit for fun. I told you to have your hairdryer handy. I thought we would need it, but I think we didn't. If at any time when you're doing this kind of a process and you have like the brown up here that needed some more detail added to it, then dry it with your hairdryer before you try to go back in again. We really didn't need it this time, and I hope that your banana looks good enough to eat. I hope maybe it looks something like mine. This is today's, which doesn't look finished to me. Looks like I need to go back and put the shading in a little bit further up around the banana. Not up, I'm sorry. Out a little bit further from the banana. More like this one is. And probably go back and work on that shading some more. And even though mine is dry now, if I take a clean wet brush with not a lot of moisture in it, just a damp wet brush, I can go back and loosen those colors and move them around and put the dark lighter, drag the dark down into the light, like the purple down into the yellow if I want to. All kinds of things I can still do. So it doesn't have to be completed right now, because it clearly to me is not. Your banana will not look like my banana. Your banana won't look like anybody sitting next to you on either side if you're painting with partners. Every time you paint an original something, yours is going to be your own. It's going to be slightly different from mine and everybody else's, and it's going to be okay. And the more you practice, the happier you will be with your results. Okay, enjoy your banana. Practice bananas some more. Get comfortable with your paints. And come and see me next time when we do some more. Oh yes, you can. Bye.